Scrimmage number 2 for Tennessee football in fall camp. That happens today. What do we need to see from Tennessee to make sure it's progressing as we get closer to opening kickoff? That and a whole lot more. It's your Wednesday Locked On Vols.
You are Locked On Vols, your daily podcast on the Tennessee Volunteers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, good Wednesday morning, everybody. This is Locked On Vols. It is your team every single day. I'm your host, Eric Kane. Appreciate you guys for being here. Shout out everydayers for making this show possible, making this show what it is. I got a fun one coming up today. Scrimmage number 2, going to preview that. Some of the things I'll be looking forward to and looking forward to hearing coming out of the scrimmage from Josh Heupel. He'll meet with the media later this morning when the scrimmage wraps up. The Freak List, the annual Freak List put out by The Athletic, has one Tennessee player mentioned on there. Who is it? And what are these anonymous coaches saying around the SEC about quarterback Joe Milton? We'll get into that in segment number 2 and then catch up with Josh Ward in segment number 3. Going to be a fun one. Buckle up. Let's get to it. Scrimmage 2. I want to be short and sweet. It's going to be kind of a shorter segment here because we'll go into detail breaking down the news that comes out of scrimmage number 2. That's coming up on tomorrow's show. But, quickly we'll look back at scrimmage number 1. It was wet. It was last Thursday. Monsooning, tons and tons of storms here in East Tennessee. So the track was wet, if you will. It's slippery. And so Joe Milton didn't have a lot of his normal targets out there. Brew McCoy didn't play. Dante Thornton didn't play. Ramel Keaton didn't play. Squirrel White didn't play. Those 4 wide receivers were held out. And so you saw a lot of Caleb Webb, some Chaz Nimrod, some Nathan Leacock, some of these younger wide receivers get some opportunities in scrimmage number 1. Scrimmage number 1 was also, at least in part early on, dominated by the defense and the defensive front, that defensive line, which has been a theme throughout fall camp because of some veteran plays and because of strength in numbers and all that, and plus some deficiencies on the offensive line right now as they continue to try to work through that. I think some runs happened later on in the scrimmage to where, Jalen Wright got loose a couple of times. I think Joe Milton threw a touchdown. I think the offense was fine. I think the quarterbacks were fine. At least Josh Heupel seemed pleased with the quarterbacks coming out of that first scrimmage last week. But it was a day that was won by the defense, and that's not unheard of. Early on in camp, defense, again, is reactionary. Offense is all about running a play, obviously, but also doing it in an efficient manner, and especially in this offense, it's timing and tempo. So the fact that the defense has been ahead early on, that's nothing to freak out about. But I think at least the first thing that I'm looking for in this scrimmage, and what you're hoping to hear from this scrimmage, is that more guys get on the field. Joe Milton, though they do it in practice every single day in fall camp, he needs to be throwing to his guys. He needs to be throwing to his wide receivers. He needs to be, operating at the fast clip and getting used to those guys out there. And again, they do this in practice all the time, so it's not like it was a huge burden that they didn't scrimmage last week. But you like to see them do it at Neyland Stadium. Like to do it, in that type of setting and situational football and all that. So hopefully, if anybody has an inkling of an injury, they're going to hold them out because there's no sense in a guy that is going to play a big role for this team, whoever it may be. There's no sense whatsoever in trying to put them in position to potentially get hurt again or worsen that injury, if you will. So I hope that some of those receivers do play in this scrimmage coming up later today, whether that's Brew McCoy, Dante Thornton, Ramel Keaton, Squirrel White. Hopefully all those guys play. But obviously you want to get out injury-free. So the first thing I'm hoping to hear and look forward to in this scrimmage is more guys get on the field. Tyler Barham was limited in that first scrimmage. I think Jacob Warren was limited a little bit as well. Some guys did not play. Also, another thing, maybe number 2 on my list, I want to see the offense move the football a little bit. You feel great about wide receiver. You feel good about where you are at quarterback right now. You feel good about your running back room. The question is the offensive line, and it's been a question coming into fall camp. It's still been a question midway through fall camp, trying to figure out right tackle, trying to figure out left guard, and then, of course, with Cooper Mays sidelined for a little bit right now, you've had Ollie Lane shift down and take over the center responsibilities just so, he can run that tempo and get the football back to Joe Milton in the shotgun. What's this offensive line look like? Can this offensive line come together and be a cohesive unit to where the offense can move the football a little bit and, become a threatening unit earlier on in the scrimmage and not have to rely on situational football to maybe get in the end zone. Again, I'm not trying to say the offense will shut out or anything in scrimmage number 1, but the defense owned the day. Can the offense win the day? Can the offense win the day in scrimmage number 2? We'll see. Again, they're still trying to figure some things out on the offensive line. Brings me to my next point. Ollie Lane's your center right now. Until Cooper Mays returns, Ollie Lane's your center. So I think the focus, and we'll get the tackle in a moment, needs to be on left guard. During inside run period of practice on Tuesday morning. Again, it was just inside run. They were mixing and matching and cross-training. Andre Keurig was up there with the ones, getting some reps at left guard. What can Andre Keurig bring? He's been banged up a little bit in fall camp. I don't believe he was in the fold on last Thursday as well. This will be a big opportunity for the Texas transfer and Andre Keurig. So what does he look like in this scrimmage? Addison Nichols had a really good scrimmage last Thursday. He got some work with the ones at center and everything, but he also got some work over at left guard, which is his home base. That is his natural position. Is Addison Nichols continuing to plug along a little bit and move up the ladder and maybe securing that starting role at left guard? Again, we won't truly know who the left guard is until Cooper Mays comes back, because then you can put Ollie Lane back over there potentially, and Ollie Lane could be your left guard. The left guard's always been a huge question mark. Who are the tackles tomorrow? Gerald Mincey ran some of the ones at right tackle a little bit. Of course, that's primarily been J.J. Crawford. John Campbell's been your left guard. How does J.J. Crawford and Gerald Mincey split reps tomorrow, and with which teams, the ones or the twos? Clearly going to be intrigued about that. You need to start finding some separation. You need to start finding some guys who are solidifying themselves as guys you can count on. And it might not be a finished product going into week 1 in the Virginia game. It might not. I mean, Tennessee was really never settled at left tackle last year, if we're being honest. And, of course, you led the country in total offense and scoring offense. That was a special year. I'm not saying that's how you'd be okay doing that every single year. But you had a lot of weapons. You had a really, really good quarterback. So offensive line obviously going to be looking at that. You want no injuries, of course. I mentioned that earlier, but I'm going to say it again because you don't want any injuries whatsoever. The secondary. You've had some guys banged up a little bit. Wesley Walker's missed a little bit. Tamiri McDonald's missed a little bit. Some of these other guys have been banged up just a smidge. What's that starting secondary look like tomorrow? Feels like Kamal Haddon and Danico Slaughter are, doing well at cornerback right now. Could you see another guy challenge them tomorrow, or maybe get some reps with the ones? That's something I'll be looking forward to at the cornerback position. Gabe Judy Lawley, Brandon Turnage, maybe one of these young pups like Jordan Matthews, Ricky Gibson, or a guy that's quietly had a really strong camp, Christian Conyer, the true freshman from Bowling Green, Kentucky. What do those cornerbacks look like tomorrow? Tamiri McDonald, he did not scrimmage last week. He's been dressed in full pads. All these guys have, but they've been limited some in practice. Tamiri McDonald, if he goes, I doubt he'll go, but if he goes, he'll be at star. If not, Warren Burrell is going to be playing the star position. So what does Warren Burrell continue to look like? I want to see guys separate themselves. I've always coined the first scrimmage of fall camp as moving day. Really, I would coin this one as solidifying days. You need to have a good idea of what you have after this scrimmage. It doesn't have to be a finished product. It does not have to be perfect. It never will be, but you need to kind of have a game plan of, all right, this is who I'm going to go with. This is my rotation. This is what I feel good about in the secondary, on the offensive line, and all that. So more than anything, I want to see the offense have a little bit more life, move the football a little bit more, score a little bit more, and if Joe Milton has his complement of receivers, I'm sure that won't be an issue. Offensive line, I think they got beat up at times in scrimmage number 1. Can you take a step? And, I think this defensive line is really going to help out this offensive line in the grand scheme of things, because I think this defensive line is pretty solid. So those are some of the things I'm looking forward to. And again, it's not much different than things we talk about every single day in practice. Not much different from what we talked about last scrimmage going into it. I don't think penalties were that big of an issue, but thing I emphasized going into scrimmage number 1 was no procedural penalties, pre-snap penalties, and I don't think that was the case, and obviously you want that to carry over into scrimmage number 2 as well. We'll see what happens. They're going to scrimmage at about 9:30 in the morning at Neyland Stadium. Josh Heupel will take to the podium around 11:30, and of course we'll recap it all tomorrow right here on Locked On Vols. What Tennessee looked like in scrimmage number 2. Your go-to place for that information will be right here on Locked On Vols. All right, guys, when we come back, Freak List. What Tennessee player appeared on the annual Athletic Freak List and why? And what are some coaches saying about Joe Milton? That's coming up next right here on Locked On Vols. It's anonymous on Joe Milton, so that'll be good here. But first, I want to reintroduce you guys to a proud sponsor that jumped on the show yesterday. It's Nutrafol. And, it's something that we as men, the older we get, we don't like, talking about it an awful lot, but we need to, right? Did you know that 80% of men will experience hair thinning in their lifetime? It's normal, but it doesn't have to be your fate. You can get ahead of thinning with Nutrafol. All right, you can go to Nutrafol.com/men to take their health wellness quiz. Identify causes of your thinning hair. Nutrafol will give you a personalized plan for better hair health through the whole body wellness. Nutrafol supports healthy hair growth from within by targeting root causes of thinning, such as stress, hormones, environment, nutrition, lifestyle, metabolism, through the body, and whole body health. They go in there and they find a plan for you, the root of the cause, and they try to treat that plan, right? And you can do it all at Nutrafol. Take the first step to visibly thicker, healthier hair. For a limited time, Nutrafol is offering our listeners here on Locked On Vols $10 off your first month subscription and a free shipping when you go to Nutrafol.com/men and enter the promo code LOCKEDONCollege. Find out why 4,000 healthcare professionals recommend Nutrafol for their healthier hair. Nutrafol.com/men, spelled Nutrafol.com/men, and enter the promo code LOCKEDONCollege. That's Nutrafol.com/men, promo code LOCKEDONCollege. All right, guys, welcome back into it. Your Wednesday edition of Locked On Vols. Appreciate you guys for being here. We'll have Josh Ward, co-host of Josh and Swain on 99.1 The Sports Animal. He'll be coming up in segment number 3 for his Ward Wednesday hit. But one of the things I love to read and uncover as we venture on towards football season every single year, it's the annual list from The Athletic. It's called the Freak List. And when the Freak List comes out, you know you are getting close to football time in Tennessee. The last couple of seasons, Elijah Simmons has been on the Freak List for The Athletic. He is not the one Tennessee player that is mentioned on the Freak List for Tennessee this year, maybe because they continue to put him on there and he never really played a big role in the defense. Hopefully that will change this year, but Elijah Simmons, everything about him, his explosiveness, his strength, his ability to sing, he is considered a freak. What this list is athletes that kind of defy the odds, right? A combination of strength and speed and size and all that type of stuff, quickness, that really kind of translates into being NFL talents as well a lot of the times. Who's the one player that appeared for Tennessee on the Athletics Freak List heading into the 2023 season? That one player, it's Squirrel White. Kind of the opposite of a lot of these adjectives and ways I've been describing guys like Elijah Simmons and all that. Because Squirrel White he's explosive, he's quick, he's twitchy, but he's small. This is what the Athletic has to say about Squirrel White, who they deem the freak for Tennessee. Love the name, love the wheels. The 5'10", 165-pound sophomore, one of the fastest wide receivers in college football, is being counted on to fill the former Vol Blazer Jalen Hyatt's role of the lethal slot man. White has been clocked at 23.4 miles per hour velocity on the catapult system and also has a vertical jump of 40.6 inches. When Hyatt opted out of the Orange Bowl, White had a season-high 9 catches for 108 yards and 1 touchdown in the win over Clemson. And no, Squirrel isn't his given name. It's Marquarius. But his great-grandmother called him Squirrel as an infant after he moved simultaneously with a squirrel in her garden. Okay, if you're a Tennessee fan, you've heard that story. In fact, Squirrel White even said that story either it was last week or 2 weeks ago when he got in front of the media to fall camp. Squirrel White's a great story. He's tougher than nails. Despite his strength, he plays bigger than who he is, and he's a really, really good story. You like that. He is a freak because you look at him and you would never imagine that he's an SEC top football player, but he is. And his combination of speed, agility, his hand-eye coordination, all that, if he is in that slot this year, which he will be, he and Dante Thornton both, in my opinion, the slot position in the Tennessee offense is poised to go off. Look at Velus Jones, nearly 1,000 yards back in 2021, 8 touchdowns or whatever it was. Jalen Hyatt last year, 15 touchdowns, over 1,000 yards receiving. Squirrel White and Dante Thornton can both do real big things in the slot position. And I love it, too, because Dante Thornton and Squirrel White are kind of opposites, right? Squirrel is small, compact, and he's quick, though. And Dante Thornton is long and tall. But I thought this was interesting. I almost assumed that it was going to be Elijah Simmons on the freak list for the Athletic. And when talking about Tennessee, I just kind of assumed it. And lo and behold, you get there and it's Squirrel White. But I think that's some great recognition there for Squirrel. Real quick, before we get to Josh Ward for Ward Wednesday, ESPN put out the anonymous SEC coaches, what they're saying about quarterbacks around the country. So it's not just the SEC. It's the Big 12. It's the Pac-12 right now, RIP. Big 10, ACC, all that and more, some group of fives as well. But what coaches in the conference are saying about quarterbacks in their respective leagues. I go down here, a little control F, go to Joe Milton, and this is what this ESPN article had to say about Joe Milton and some anonymous quotes on the Tennessee quarterback. Let's see here. This is from an SEC coach. An absolute cannon for an arm. There's no vertical shot that he can't hit. He's a little more of a pocket passer and seems to be comfortable standing back there and making the throws. He's got all the right tools you need. He can reach the far numbers. He can spray it all over the field. Okay, I mean, it's nothing new. I mean, that's something we've heard and everything. That's something we've read about Joe Milton even before he got here to Tennessee. This one I like a little bit more. This is coming from an SEC defensive coordinator. Remember, this is anonymous. He's the most dangerous guy. He's kind of like what Anthony Richardson was in 2022. He's humongous. I've watched him in warm-ups and pads, and I'm like, I hope he doesn't get in. But now he's up. You're damn right. Now he's up. He's ready to go. And we'll see if Joe Milton can obviously hang on to the Tennessee starting quarterback job. I think that he will. There's no quarterback competition whatsoever. But they do make note in this article when talking about Joe Milton. You've heard a lot of these things when he was at Michigan. Had a starting quarterback job, lost it. You heard these things when he came to Tennessee in 2021. Got the job, lost it. Third time's a charm, right? We will see. I think this is different. He's older. He's experienced in this system. Okay, he understands what Josh Heupel wants in a quarterback and why they're doing things, not just what to do, but why. He's healthy. He had a thumb injury that he never truly got over when he left Michigan, and I think that really bothered him the first little bit when he was starting in 2021, but he's healthy now. I love anonymous mailbags. I love anonymous quotes. These publications do a great job. Athlon does it sometimes, CBS Sports, ESPN, all over the offseason, what these SEC head coaches, defensive coordinators, offensive coordinators are saying about players in their conference, and some good stuff here from about Joe Milton from an SEC coach and an SEC defensive coordinator. Dangerous, humongous. I love this part. I hope he doesn't get in, but now he's up. Yeah, now he's up, and we'll see how he'll lead Tennessee's offense into 2023. All right, when we come back, Ward Wednesday, I asked Josh about what he's looking for in scrimmage number 2 coming up later this morning, what he hopes to hear, what Tennessee needs to hear, and if order this team's going to continue to progress on into opening day. Ask him about the AP poll. Ask him about the sheriff coming back to be a professor at the University of Tennessee. A great conversation coming up next with Josh Ward for a little Ward Wednesday right here on Locked On Vols. It's Wednesday, so we're going to bring on our buddy Josh Ward for Ward Wednesday every single Wednesday right here on Locked On Vols. Josh is the co-host of Josh and Swain on 99.1 The Sports Animal. Josh, getting closer to football season.
We are close. Swain and I have been trying to subtract days. Like weekends don't count, Fridays don't count, and game week barely counts because once you're there, it's go time, right? So getting closer.
It is getting closer. Tennessee gearing up for scrimmage number 2 coming up later today on a Wednesday morning. But I want to go back to scrimmage number 1, kind of get your thoughts, the reaction coming out from that scrimmage. Sounded like the defense did a good job kind of winning that day. Quarterbacks did all right, but overall was a good tackling day. It sounded like it was a pretty good first scrimmage for Tennessee football.
Well, the defense winning, especially with Cooper Mays being unavailable, was no real surprise at all. Then you find out, okay, well, the top 4 receivers are getting a break similar to the orange and white game. And I know there's the playing surface. Then you have some veterans. You'd like to get a break. You'd still like to get more of that work. And I know they have other team opportunities. But The talk around the linebackers, the talk around the depth that they've built along the defensive line continues to be really positive. The secondary is probably a lot of the same conversation in terms of number of players competing, and there might be some surprise results from where the conversation was a couple of months ago. We'll see how it plays out. It's also not surprising with conversation about, Jalen McCullough can't be counted out in a starting position, which I never really thought he would be counted out. But there are just a lot of guys to talk about in the secondary, but a lot of positives from the defensive line and linebacker position groups.
I think heading into the second scrimmage, you hope that Tennessee has more guys playing. You hope that the weather cooperates, of course. But what are some other things that you're looking forward to hopefully hearing if you're a Tennessee fan coming out of the second scrimmage? Feel like the offense needs to make a little bit of a push here. Understanding you don't have Cooper May, still a lot of questions on the offensive line, but I feel like in this scrimmage you hope that the offense does a little bit more, right?
Well, literal push, and that would be up front. I think one thing you'd like to hear is that some guys have solidified themselves in positions where the coaches believe, okay, this is the direction we need to go at right tackle, at left guard. And I know the left guard conversation's a little bit mixed up because you have Cooper May's absence, but in terms of when Cooper's back, this is what we're looking like here. Or, if Cooper's out, which is the case now and could happen again in the future, that this is where we're going at center and left guard. So figuring out what you're doing there and doing your best right now, again, without Cooper, to try to build continuity as much as you can, because things have changed around so much. And I think that's something they want to get figured out. I think at running back, they feel really good. At wide receiver, there should be plenty of confidence. But Joe Milton leading the offense, that they're cleaning things up, eliminating mistakes, and figuring out what they have up front. I think Tennessee's getting to the point where they want to know who they can count on, because they are about to start to transition to preparing for opponents. And part of the benefit is playing Virginia and Austin Peay. They're not getting ready for a game that they have to be ready to go, everything buttoned up, they're going to lose. That's not the case. That's not until week 3 when Tennessee goes to Florida. But you are still getting to a point where you want more answers.
Josh, kind of talk me back here, all right? I understand a lot has to happen. The secondary's got to play better. You added some new pieces, but you've got to take a step. The pass rush has got to be more consistent, especially from the front four. But talk me back here. I know everybody watches Tennessee football to watch that offense, but I think this defense is going to be better. I think this front seven is going to be a real strength. I really like the pieces making up that front seven. A lot of depth, a lot of bodies, and that's what defense is all about.
I do think that what you're saying is real. I want to see it with guys on the edge replacing Byron Young, and the positive talk about Tyler Barron from Ronnie Garner. I want to see that translate, but somebody like Omar Norman-Lott coming in, I think, was really good for Tennessee's defensive line. I think Amari Thomas is a good player. I think Bryson Eason is a player whose name doesn't come up very often probably in conversation about important players on the team, but Tennessee knows how important he is. And then I think the linebacker development is a huge step for Tennessee's team and maybe program in terms of what it can be moving forward. The Arion Carter talk appears real. And you and I talked about him in the spring in terms of how he physically looked out there. And the more that we heard during the summer, and now it's been backed up in fall camp, means to me that there is legitimate depth. I thought last year when Elijah Herring was out there, he was firing out of a cannon the way that he played, and still had a lot to learn. And that didn't mean that he was ready to go be Al Wilson on the field, but that showed that Tennessee had something to legitimately work with. And then Keenan Pili coming in with all of his experience, and Aaron Beasley, the way that he developed, means that Tennessee has a group of players that they can count on, as opposed to not knowing who they could count on and just trying to make things work over the last couple of years. And at times that did. I think Tennessee's defense was underrated over certain games last year, but then there was the South Carolina game and the Florida game and the Alabama game where it was obvious they still had a lot of room to grow, and they probably still do, but there are more players to talk about legitimately belonging in the SEC for Tennessee, and that's up front, and that's what they need. And by the way, if they are able to be more disruptive from different areas on the defensive line, well, then the secondary improves from that, and then the competition, I think, makes that better too. A
longtime friend of your radio show, whether it be Josh and Will whether it be Josh and Heather, now it's Josh and Swain, is Barrett Salee. And correct me if I misinterpreted or if I'm remembering, incorrectly here. He said on your radio show last week, Ruffle Some Feathers, a team that's a little overrated in the SEC right now would be Tennessee, and a team that's underrated or a team that's not been talked about enough is Auburn. Your thoughts on that? I'll let you have the stage for Tennessee, of course, but I mean, Auburn's not going to be good, in my opinion. I don't know why that's in that conversation. I think there's some other teams in the West that you could fit in that category outside of Auburn. Auburn in a couple of years, I think, is going to be good, but this year, not so much.
Yeah, and to be clear on the Tennessee and Auburn conversation, those were separate topics. He was not saying Auburn is ahead of Tennessee. He was saying based on the preseason talk, who could be better than is being talked about right now, and Auburn was his choice there. Part of the problem with that question, I asked that question, was everybody almost is being talked about positively, so it's difficult at this point to choose too many teams.
It's a real bad question, you're right.
Yeah, the question was dumb. But his record for Tennessee is 9-3. So he answered Tennessee being overhyped as a top 10 team because he views a top 10 team as a real playoff national title contender, and he doesn't view Tennessee there. I'm guessing he views 9-3. I didn't ask for a specific ranking, but you're kind of splitting hairs. Like number 12 in the AP poll, which came out after the conversation, could potentially be 9-3, right? In the SEC with the schedule that Tennessee plays. But Barrett has questions about Joe Milton, which I think is fair. When I said it ruffled feathers, it's because almost immediately the reaction was, why would he say that? How dare he? He hates Tennessee. There was that reaction when Barrett's been one of the more positive national media members to kind of pump up where Tennessee is and Josh Heupel and what he's doing with the program. So he likes Tennessee, just not as a top 10 playoff team. Auburn, we'll see. He also made the comment the day before they scrimmaged, I think, and the word coming out of that was, Peyton Thorne may have not looked that good. So, but he had Tennessee at 9-3. He said Auburn probably can get to 9 wins, but maybe 7 or 8. So the two schools were not being compared to one another.
Yeah, Barrett Salee, he picked Tennessee to beat Florida, I want to say maybe 2021, maybe 2020, maybe.
Last year, his program on the rise choice was Tennessee. He had Tennessee going 9-3. Of course, they went 10-2, which was better than his prediction. But he had Tennessee second in the East last year as the program for everybody to watch out for. He said with Josh Heupel, everybody has to be on notice now and moving forward.
All right, last thing I want to get your thoughts on. The sheriff is now the professor. Peyton Manning going to teach some classes over at the University of Tennessee. What's your take on that? And have you ever thought of being an adjunct professor yourself? Because I have. Literally, when I was starving for money, I mean, I'd always like to have more money, but when I was starving for money, I'm like, why don't I just go back and teach a class online? That'd be super easy. But Peyton Manning's going to do that.
Yeah, I've told him, I'm a grad there in the journalism school. Let me know if you ever need me for anything, if there's an opportunity. Like, yeah, we'll get back to you. Haven't heard anything. My wife, though, she teaches some over at UT and works at UT, so she and Peyton are colleagues now, which
cool.
I think is really cool. The demand for the class is probably going to be pretty high, right?
Yep.
And students wanting to sign up and learn from Peyton. So I really have always thought it's cool how much he cares about Tennessee, how he works Tennessee into the conversation. Sometimes you type LOL and you didn't actually laugh. I laughed out loud when he and Eli were having the conversation about Hendon Hooker in the draft buildup, I believe.
Yes.
And Peyton was smoking the cigar in the field, and Eli asked, "You think you should have been smoking the cigar? The players went out there and won." And he said, "As much money as I've given to the university, yeah, I can smoke a cigar too," something like that. So he legitimately cares about Tennessee and wants Tennessee to succeed and wants to be connected to the university. And that's both sides, and this proves it. There's the athletic department, there's football, but there's the university, and I think he cares about both sides. And I think it's impossible to find as high profile of an athlete who is a bigger ambassador for his alma mater than Peyton Manning.
Tennessee's got a couple of those ambassadors as well, but it'd be tough to do more than what.
Yeah, he's not the only one, but in terms of his status among all-time athletes, all-time quarterbacks for sure in the NFL, and his connection, how public he is about it, and private. There's even more private that he's done to help Tennessee. You're not going to find somebody topping what Peyton has done for the University of Tennessee.
Josh and Swain, noon to 3 weekdays on 99.1 The Sports Animal. What's coming up the rest of the week on the show, and of course the newsletter on Friday morning?
Yeah, a lot of football talk. Our Wednesday show will have a little reaction to the scrimmage action, scrimmage number 2, separation scrimmage for Tennessee. And the countdown continues because we're just crossing off days. So, Eric, depending on when people listen to this, 4, 5, maybe 6 days to go, and then it's time for kickoff.
Can't wait. And if you want to get the Josh and Swain newsletter, you can get that link in the show description of this email every Friday morning about 8:30, the Josh and Swain newsletter. Really good weekend read to get your day started. Josh, appreciate it, man. Thanks as always.
Thanks, Eric.
Great stuff there from Josh Ward, always, every single Wednesday, Ward Wednesday, right here on Locked On Vols. Appreciate you guys for being here. Been a fun show today. Talked about Squirrel White making the freak list for The Athletic, and there's a lot of freaks, if you will, in college football. I encourage you to go to read that from The Athletic. It's one of my favorite things to read leading into football season every single year. But Squirrel White was talked about that from Tennessee. Anonymous coaches around the SEC on quarterback Joe Milton. His arm, he's humongous, Anthony Richardson-esque, right? Some good stuff there. And, of course, previewing scrimmage number 2. That's set to take place a little after 9 o'clock this morning. Depending on what time you're listening to this, maybe the scrimmage has already happened, and we're in full-blown reaction mode, and we'll talk about all that on Thursday's Locked On Vols. Appreciate you guys for being here as always. Thanks so much for subscribing, following the show on YouTube, and wherever you get your podcast. If you're on Apple Podcasts, do me a favor. Please rate me 5 stars. Leave me a positive review. We are a top 100 football podcast in America, and it's all because of you. Can't thank you enough. We'll do it again on Thursday. This is Locked On Vols.